Okay, we're now on the air live. The little
Cool.
pop-up says. And so I thought what we would do, Brooke, and this is, real informal, so whatever ideas you have or whatever meets your fancy, we can certainly do. But I thought
Yeah.
we'd maybe just go over like the introduction of Dr. Mao's book and see what comments we might have or what we might have garnered from reading that. And I'm finding that I'm rereading the book over and over, various
Mm-hmm.
sections.
Yeah.
And one of the disadvantages I found in Dr. Mao's book was that it's so complete because you have the 5 different elements, and I happen to be the water element primarily, and a little bit of metal. And so to find my particular element, I leaped through the different sections of the book to find that thing that pertains to the water or the metal. And then looking at his website, it appears he actually has a book for each of the elements. So presumably he's taken section to the main book and just made a book out of each element, and that would make it a whole lot easier. But
Oh,
so I
wow.
had I just made a little cheat sheet and wrote down the pages, for my elements. Just leap through from day to day and refresh my memory.
Oh, that's cool.
But I definitely am finding I've got to reread it. And I reread the introduction this morning, and I thought, boy, I don't remember reading that before. So every time you read it, you pick out something else that hits you at the moment.
I completely agree. In fact, I guess at first, when I first read it, it my first thought process was it's so simple. And I'm kind of like, how is this going to help me? I kind of already know this stuff, but same, like as I keep reading it, as I come across something that I want to look up, the it's almost like the book has so much depth to it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger with more information, even though like each page, some of them have like 4 sentences on them, and suddenly it has so much depth to it that I didn't quite grasp the first time I read it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. When I first got the book to review, I was kind of surprised that, like you say, some of the pages are just a few paragraphs, and some of them, it's 1 or 2 pages or something, kind of a thing. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange, because I'm used to reading a book that's just print, 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 print all the way through 300 pages.
Yeah.
But now I kind of see the sense. He's kind of giving you the main ideas and breaking them up into little easy to digest things. Now I'm going to try something. Now you can what they call screen share here. So I have the introduction page ready here from the
Okay.
PDF that we originally sent, and I'm going to try to screen share and just see how it works. And it may not work too good because of my slow internet. So you can tell me if it's readable or not. So I'm
Okay.
now sharing that. Does it show up on your screen, the 1 page there?
Nope.
Okay, let me see here if I did anything. Oh, okay, let me push another button here. It says present to everybody. Okay, now does it show up?
Nope. It's just your face.
Oh, uh, okay, let me try another. Boy, it might be just my computer is not capable of doing that for some reason. Uh, yeah, but I'm actually seeing it on my screen. But I have no idea why you're not seeing it. Anyway, so I'm going to stop that because that didn't seem to work. Okay. Anyway, so let me just read a little bit from the introduction.
Sure.
And like I say, I read that this morning, and I just didn't remember it being that clear the
Yeah.
first few times I read it. Okay, so Dr. Mao says everyone wants to be happy, and of course, it's pretty common sense. But sometimes you don't think about that. What are people about? Well, they really want to be happy. What else? What more do you want? Well, some people, like in my earlier years, I wanted to make a whole lot of money, so
Yeah.
I didn't really say I want to be happy.
Yeah. What is
In fact,
happiness?
yeah, exactly. In fact, I used to, I was way back when they first started personal computers. I was one of the original people that got Apple. They had Apple II plus computer, one of the very first ones. And I used to use it for my real estate operations. And I read in some book. I used to love to read books and clip out little sayings and put them in a notebook and so forth. And one of the ones that I put down is be the most productive at every moment. And I typed
That's
that,
very true.
put it on my computer screen, and for years thought that's the secret of success, just to be the
Mm,
most productive you can. Then years later, I mean, really, literally years, because that was the time I was trying to make a whole lot of money. And so
mm-hmm.
years later, I read something, and it said, um, I remember the exact thing, but it's basically just the opposite of that. Instead of being productive, do the thing that feels the best to you or the most happy, makes you the happiest.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, wait a minute. You mean all these years I've been thinking I should make money and be productive, and that's the secret to everything?
Mm-hmm.
And then so I got rid of that one and put up the other expression, which is, the thing that brings you most happiness. And then since those days, I think I really believe that's the thing, but I didn't realize it in my younger days. So
Yeah.
Dr. Mao is absolutely correctly. Everyone wants to be happy, but they might not necessarily know it when they're younger, which I didn't know.
Yeah, I think I just learned that, and and when I say learned, I've kind of realized a different truth, but I have a lot more of the journey to go. But I used to be similar to you, where I felt like, the early bird gets the worm. You had to constantly work and work and work to get where you wanted to be, and anyone pretty much, you had to do it yourself, and so I constantly was pushing myself and pushing myself, and then I broke my foot in December,
Mm.
and I broke it bad, and it would not heal very quickly, and I almost feel like the universe was trying to explain to me that you can actually still accomplish things without being constantly on the run, constantly pushing yourself. And that I could create happiness just by sitting still. I wasn't going to gain weight just by looking at food, or, that there was a lot more to life than just constantly moving. And that was massive. So it's funny that you say this. I used to feel the same way. And just now I'm realizing that's not the key to happiness.
Yeah. And and then I think back, well, who teaches these things? Obviously I didn't know Dr. Mao when I was in junior high or anything, or his father.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose in a sense, our churches kind of give us some sense of that, but when we're young, we kind of don't really believe that stuff a lot. It's like, well, you go to school or synagogue or whatever, and you get your little message, and then you go on to your job and try to make a bunch of money. So,
Yeah.
so it's kind of baffling to me that younger folks either aren't taught it well, or maybe younger folks aren't capable of understanding it. I don't know, but
That's funny, because I was just, how I sent you a passage on from one of Dr. Mao's father's books that I was reading, and I
Mhm.
was reading last night how he was talking about the cycles of the universe and the cycles of life and all of that. And one of the things he talked about was how we can measure our cycles of life the same way in spring, summer, fall, winter. And that's actually how we are supposed to be. So when we are young, like in the spring and summer of our lives, we are supposed to be, boundless and constantly moving and functioning and learning. And that's actually kind of part of where we're supposed to be. And then as we age, we are supposed to slow down. Like as we come into the autumn of our lives, he said, we become more still and contemplative. So, I mean, that concept, I hate it. Beauty is wasted on the young and energy and all of that. But I guess that's kind of the way we are designed to be,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. In Dr. Mao's introduction, he goes on and says, of course, everybody wants to be happy, but few ever achieve that universally desired state of joy and bliss, because most people, he says, are looking for that one holy grail, promising to make them live happily ever. And I suppose that was happened to me back in the early days. I says, well, in fact, I think I can remember having a goal of, well, I'm going to become a millionaire, and then I can use the millionaire to bring peace to the world or bring happiness to the people. So the goal is, you know, the selfish thing, I'm going to make a bunch of money. Then once I get satisfied, then I will help other people.
Yeah.
So that was my whole thing. So that was my kind of my holy grail, is to make $1 million, and that would just solve everything. Well, obviously it doesn't, and I knew that as I was doing it from all the things I read. You know, there's no way that money is bringing you happiness, no matter how much. In fact, as it turns out, the sociologists find that once you have a basic amount of income to, you know, provide your shelter and food and provide for your family, then anything more than that doesn't bring you any extra happiness. But if you drop below that amount and you have a hard time paying your rent or your mortgage or something, then you're going to be a little unhappy because you just can't buy.
No,
So anyway, yeah, so my holy grail was, I was really going after, I'll tell you, for 10 or so years.
Oh, I find that my holy grail changes. That's been a huge thing. Like, I've always been a relatively happy person. I've always kind of been satisfied with what I've had and seen the brighter side. And so once I was happy, it didn't dawn on me that I was going to need any other happiness. And so that was a rude awakening that, you know, once I achieved a certain level of happiness, that it was time to move on and find something new. That was interesting. So.
Yeah, and he goes on and says, happiness eludes us because we bought into the myth that happiness is to achieve rather than a state of being. Which is quite interesting because 10 years ago, I'm not sure I would quite understand what state of being means, you know.
No, yeah.
We're so, you know, taught to achieve, you know, go out and start a business, go out and become the president of the company or whatever. So state of being, that would have been a mystery to me. And probably is to a lot of people still, you know, and it's kind of a, you know, how do you explain a state of being? And I think his book is kind of like, you know, leading you into what in the world that is. It's a state rather than something that you're achieving. In fact, you had mentioned something about quietness or moving a little slower or something that probably is wound up in that idea of state of being.
Absolutely.
I think my nose is running. Let me excuse me while I blow my nose here.
Oh, you're fine.
If only I can find something. I can't remember where I put my little. Now let me block my thing here. I'll be right back. Yeah, I haven't had a cold, I don't know, for probably 3, maybe even 4 years. I very rarely have any kind of problem like that.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And so it's odd. I remember it might be too, because I don't really have to go around shaking people's hands or, you know, touching a lot. And that probably protects me quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
In my earlier years, though, you know, it's always, you know, teaching and stuff, and I was always telling people and shaking hands, and, you know, back in those days, I could count on getting a cold every year, probably. But
yeah, that's kind of me.
But now I, unfortunately, don't have to shake hands with a lot of folks during the week. Okay, let's see here. Going back to Dr. Mao's introduction here. Says true happiness comes from a life well lived, and it's a byproduct of finding health, balance, and fulfillment in the physical, emotional, spiritual, social, and financial aspects of your life. And of course, that's kind of he's leading up to what the book is about. He's showing us all, depending on our element or combination of elements, that he's going to show us how to balance our physical, emotional, spiritual, social, and financial aspects. And then that's what the book does. So the idea, of course, is what we're trying to do then is cut through all the kind of bad tapes we've had in our previous years and try to find a balance in our health of those various things. And then he says that on this journey to be life, you have to understand who you are, why you are here, and where you want to go. And he had mentioned that, I think, in maybe not the last version we had with him, or maybe it was the first one, where he was pointing out because he was giving his example of, he discovered that he wanted to teach and help heal people and that kind of stuff, but he apparently didn't come to that realization until, later in his life. And so, he understood that your life, which will bring happiness, is to figure out what you can do because of your element, and then decide that's what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Now he does point out, though, that sometimes we'll make a mistake in choosing what we think we should be doing, and if you find out, well, that was certainly a misinterpretation, then you need to change it. So,
did you answer the questions at the end of the book? Because it took me forever to answer those questions.
I read them, of course, but I didn't, physically write out anything. I kind of mentally thought of them. Although there was something that confused me at the end. It seemed like the last couple pages, they were kind of duplicating. One was, I think he was asking us to contemplate those questions, and then the last page, it was kind of the same wording, but he was answering for himself or something. It kind of clear to me what he was doing there.
I think he was just sharing, which obviously, because he's the author and the creator, I think it's why it sounded so similar, because it came from his mind.
So that, and then he had, when the first conversation we had with him, I think he put it out to me that, I probably should continue the teaching, and which I've been doing for a long time. But I hadn't really thought of it. I hadn't really thought, well, that is what I'm for. I'm for the teaching. It might have been in the back of my mind, but I didn't think, as he's maybe thinking, that, you kind of just narrow in a sense on what you're good at, and then just that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, and that's difficult.
Yeah, especially, you have a family, for example. You've got things going here and there and everywhere, and you got to try to balance all that, and then balance your career, balance what you want to do in a year or 5 years. And in some ways, that's a whole lot tougher than my life now, because basically I'm all set, and I don't have to really so much worry about, well, I got 3 kids running around here, grandkids or whatever. That's not a big concern. So it's, in some ways, it's a little easy for me to kind of narrow down and not get distracted. So I kind of have feelings for folks who have families and still have to arrange all those things around their life, and not easy.
Or I can be devil's advocate here and say, are you kind of placing yourself in this bubble where you're like, okay, I'm set, and you don't realize that there's so much more that you could be introducing yourself to? I mean, like, my life's crazy at the moment, and I'm bouncing all over the place, and I don't know, like, there's things I'm really good at that I kind of look at and I'm like, man, I don't want to do that forever. But, and I'm kind of turning it away, but at least I feel like the opportunities that I'm constantly being bombarded with could be a blessing in disguise,
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and that's true, because I do kind of live in a bubble of probably my own making, not having to go into work and interact with a whole bunch of people anymore. And I kind of enjoy it, but I think that's kind of the personality thing, too. The water is, I'm not the go-getter or the social butterfly or something. and I've never been that. So I'm kind of enjoying, but that's a good point, that to be balanced, I probably should get out a little more and interact with folks and use any talents I have to do with other folks. So that's a good point. That's the balance thing.
I guess not necessarily going out to get other people, but don't put yourself in a position where you think that you're set. I have a bunch of clients who I hear them say things like, "Oh, well, you're young, you have more opportunity," and I feel like we place these holds us. Oh, well, I'm older, so I can't do that, or I already have lived that aspect. And I guess to me, I'm like, as long as you're living, you can live any aspect you want, kind of thing. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's see. Continuing on with Dr. Mao's intro here. Let's see what he says. Okay, then he's talking about self-discovery, which is the purpose of taking that test, so we know what our element is, or what our other kind of similar elements our personality is. So he says we need to know these things through self-discovery as the basis for achieving your life. It's only through self-discovery that your life becomes purposely driven, and that you can answer the calling of your spirit and trust the path that your life desires to take. Yeah, and it made it real clear to me, doing the test and finding out about the different personalities. When I first read the book, I didn't know about the test, and so I just read through the book, and I was kind of guessing, well, am I the water, am I the fire, because I saw a little bit of egos, of course, in myself for all the 5 elements. Mm-hmm. But I kind of guessed my main one was metal, which is the methodical thing. I wanted to checklist and go down the list and do all that stuff. So I thought I was the metal. And then when I took the test, apparently I was a little more of the water. Well, actually, at the time, I didn't know how much more. Did you, by any chance, discover that there's another test that I think maybe his brother published?
No.
Yeah, if you Google 5-element personality quiz, you'll come up with another one that has something to do with infinity. And I suspect it might be an older one, or maybe it has something to do with his brother's stuff. I'm not real sure. But the second one gives you a score for all of the 5 elements. It just doesn't tell you your main one, but it'll say, you got 30 points for this one, 28 for the other one. So when I took that, I found out that I was mainly the water, but the metal was a close second, which didn't surprise me. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think I put a link to that on the explanation of this Hangout thing. So if you read over the material I wrote on that, there's a link to that.
I'm definitely interested in that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was good to know too, because at first I thought, well, how weak am I, so to speak, on fire or wood, or the other ones. So now it gave me some clue that I need some more work on balancing those other ones, which I'm quite the opposite of, as it turns out. So it was kind of revealing to do that.
Yeah, when I read the book, I read the book before I took the quiz, and I felt like I was such a blend of earth and water and fire. And there's so many, I couldn't have told you. I felt like almost like there are just certain points in my life where I tend to, I guess I'm a fire person at this aspect, and I'm a water person at this aspect. But I knew I am so far away from metal, it's ridiculous. I really need to work on my metal. And I don't think I'm as in touch with my wood self as I could be, but it's not nearly as far away as the metal. But I was I was surprised when it picked water. And then there was a part of me that was just like, well, duh. but I guess I never wanted to think that of myself, maybe. I don't know. It
Hmm.
was it was very interesting. I would have said I was fire, period. Because I'm
Yeah.
just so full of energy. And it never dawned on me that my energy actually came from water, not just from my fire.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd love to take that quiz and just see the different dynamics of it.
Yeah, and I guess in a sense you could take it from time to time and see how you're progressing on balancing the different elements. But the only hitch to that is you kind of become used to the question, so you kind of know how the answer should be to meet a certain, if you wanted to become a water, you would know how to answer it. So you could almost, in a sense, trick yourself into thinking, well, I'm becoming water now, when it's really because you knew the
Mhm.
answers you would theoretically give to become water. So it could be a little tricky. Maybe you should do it maybe every 6 months so you don't remember the questions or something, but at least you
Yeah.
could test to see what your changing is. Now, the Dr. Mao's book on the introduction, again, this morning it cleared up another question I was going to ask him. And of course, when we ask him questions, we always think, boy, we must be stupid to ask this question.
I know.
But I had a question earlier about what blockages were, because he had mentioned that later in the book about it was on one of the meditations or something, as I recall, that to clear your blockages, and I was not
Yeah.
too sure what that meant. And so on this one paragraph, he's talking about without knowing your strengths and weaknesses and your deep spiritual nature, you cannot recognize the behavioral patterns that you replay day in and day out. And of course, that's our typical habits of and thinking patterns, your hot buttons or whatever, things that get you upset or get you
Yep.
relaxed or whatever. We just replay those every day. And if we're not aware of that, then we just keep doing it forever until we die. And
Yeah.
so he's pointing out in the book what your strengths and weaknesses are, especially for your particular element.
Yeah.
And then he says, by learning about these self-created blockages in your life, you can work on constructive changes that help you understand yourself and achieve your full potential. So I'm thinking now, in a sense, those blockages are those tapes we play in our head. Somebody yells at me, well, that's a hot button, so I yell back at them, and
Yeah.
I just keep doing it. If somebody yells at me, I yell back at them, for example,
Yeah.
or so it's just these habits we picked up and our thinking patterns, and those are our blockages because they're presumably not the way we were designed. We weren't supposed to just be a hothead, for example, or
Yep.
or vice versa. Maybe somebody was reaction to somebody attacking them is to just lay back and be passive. So maybe we're even designed to do that. It's some middle way. So
Absolutely. I'm sure it has to do with the middle because it's not good to be fully passive or a hothead. So, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that gave me a better idea of what he's talking about on blockages. Now, when I go to that section later in the book, I can put in whatever what my blockage is. Now,
Yeah.
knowing this more of my mental thinking usually that is not a balanced or middle way. Yeah.
I don't think you're that, don't make fun of your question because, I mean, I completely see that blockage, but also when they talk about Qigong or Tai Chi or even Chinese medicine, they talk about blockages in certain aspects of our psyche, our spirituality, of like blockages in our physical body, which I still am trying to kind of grasp at.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's such a great question. So don't you need to keep asking and then
Yeah,
tell me what you
exactly.
find out.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I think pretty much you got a good start here this morning, Brooke.
Yep.
Probably talked about half an hour or so.
Yep.
What did we just stop this particular one? I'll stop the broadcast and we can just carry on for a few minutes if you want. But I'll stop the broadcast here, and then if you're willing and able to do it every Sunday, we can just schedule it every Sunday and just go little by little through the book and see how our lives are changing with that process.
I would love that. Thank you so much. And hopefully maybe with the broadcast we can bring more people in and
Yeah,
hear
exactly.
more. Yep.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because it'll be on YouTube, on my Google Plus page, and I guess there's ways you could put it on yours. I can't remember how to do it offhand, but you could also share it around and invite people and so forth. So
I
anyway,
will.
we'll stop this broadcast and just hang in there, and I'll